All right, good morning. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for that patience while getting started. Let's call to order the TPO Technical Committee meeting for November the 12th. Got an agenda in front of you. Dallas, do we have a quorum this morning?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Let's start with Amy and go around and do introductions real quick, please.
Amy Brooks, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
I'm Tom Playboat with City of Knoxville Engineering.
Beth Collins, City of Lenore City.
Laura Smith, East Tennessee Development District.
Dallas DeArmond, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
James Temple, Sevier County.
Durand Hacker, Blount County.
Brian Boone, City of Maryville Engineering and Public Works.
Daryl Smith, Town of Farragut.
Doug Burton, TPO Coordinator.
Jack Walls, Loudoun County, City of Loudoun.
Jim Snow, Knox County Engineering Public Works.
Pat Downs, Knoxville Area Transit.
Deanna Flincham, Knoxville Commuter Pool.
Karen Estes, Knox County CEC Transit.
Jason Bennett, Metropolitan Knoxville Airport Authority.
Troy Ebert, TDOT.
Tina Whitaker, Lakeway.
Mike Patterson, Ethra Public Transit.
All right, thank you. Do we have any participants on Zoom today?
We have Timothy from Stantec, who will be joining us later, and DG Roberts from TDOT, and Anne Marie Anway.
Okay, great. Well, thank you and welcome. Is there any amendments to the agenda today? Okay, hearing none. We're going to skip the acronyms. Item number 2 is the minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes from September 10th.
Motion to approve.
I need a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3, Reconnecting Communities Grant Project Update. It's like CDC and city staff.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and have them come up and do the presentation. As you know, with the Transportation Act, there's a lot of competitive grants out there, and the City of Knoxville has done a great job of getting some of those. They more recently got a $42.6 million grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation, and I think it was a joint application with KCDC. And so today we'll have some guest speakers here to give us a little bit of a preview of what that grant all encompasses. And I'll have you introduce yourself. Thank you.
Yeah. Marissa Mawazin, I work with KCDC.
I'm Liz Albertson, and I work with Urban Design and Development with the City of Knoxville.
So we're going to give you a brief overview of the Reconnecting Knoxville proposal. This proposal was submitted to the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods grant application through DOT. The purpose of the application last year was to reconnect areas that had been separated due to some type of infrastructure improvement that occurred between probably the 60s and the 80s. So you can probably read into what that grant was looking to do, and we were successful in our application. It was a $42.6 million grant request to DOT, and then that requires 50% matching funds. So the total projects that you're going to see are just over $80 million in projects that Knoxville's doing. There we go. It did require us to have community partners, which is a little unique. So we do have a community advisory council that will be included during the grant process, as well as all of the partners in the application process. We applied 2 years in a row, so we were not successful in year 1. That's actually when we wrote the grant, and then we resubmitted that same grant. They changed the grant guidelines a little bit, but we were able to adapt and reuse that. So a lot of our grant partners we talked to in year 1 when we applied all retired by year 2. So that was a challenge when we resubmitted that same proposal again. We actually asked for a little bit more in the second proposal and got it. So you can see here, this is really the crux, this in South Knoxville, of what they were looking at. So you see a lot of infrastructure, a lot of businesses and houses and streets in 1935 that were there up until 1960. And then James White Parkway was put in, as well as some city infrastructure. So this is really what the grant was meant to address, is how are you going to reconnect these disenfranchised communities that were moved or segregated from downtown, separated from downtown due to some type of urban infrastructure that was put in. The other place that we focused was South Knoxville. You can see there the before and afters between 1969 and 2019 when James White Parkway was put in. That did disrupt some of the neighborhoods there as well. So that is the reason why we were awarded, was this disruption that's occurred, and then our plan going forward to reconnect them. This particular grant will not fund single car pathways. So no streets for single cars, individual cars. So what our plan was multimodal pathways. So greenways, bicycles, pedestrian paths that are going to reconnect all of those communities back together where currently those streets exist. So this is a very zoomed out plan. You can't necessarily see the detail. But this is above the river. You saw those with East Knoxville and then the orange part south of the river. To give you a little bit more detail within the neighborhoods, we submitted the plan as 7 segments. That was really for ease of application to tell the story. And this is a graph or a map that really shows how those 7 segments are weaved together. And we'll have a little bit more detail in a second. But we're taking existing projects like the East Knoxville Greenway that's going on and weaving them into new projects, such as affordable mixed housing development at First Creek at Austin, connecting that to the stadium. There are several public housing or subsidized housing all throughout this neighborhood. So how are we connecting them through multimodal pathways to new economic development centers coming with the stadium construction, and then connecting into South Knoxville, where is also a growing economic development center. You see the pathways there in South Knoxville, and Liz is going to talk about that and kind of what's going on there. But our segments overall, you probably don't want the granular detail, but really those 7 segments, we wove those together. The other piece of our grant that we're really proud of is this cultural corridor concept. And the Beck Cultural Center is an icon, a location that's actually on one of these pathways. And they've been working for some time of how to honor the Black businesses and Black individuals who were displaced during urban renewal. And one of the things we wrote into this grant is this cultural corridor, to have these mini pocket parks along the way where individuals can stop and reflect. And we will have a digital archive of the businesses that were in that spot before. So you'll be able to scan something, log in, or scan something, go to the internet, and then be able to see the Carnegie Library or other places that were torn down. So they have a rich digital archive. We put in funding to support that archive even more, to create an app or a website to help with all of that digital information, and then also the park pieces. So that's a key element that's non-construction, but that programming piece is really important to our application. And then the stadium, which I'm sure you all have heard about in the news or in this meeting. So connecting to the stadium, we'll connect the Beck Cultural Center down Dandridge Avenue, so you see that as well, and finish some sidewalks that aren't there. James White Parkway, if you've ever driven down James White Parkway, which is the South Knoxville Bridge. We're actually this was already in the plan, so this is a way that we were able to connect to something already in process in Knoxville. Taking a lane of James White Parkway and making that pedestrian and bike only. To allow greater access to South Knoxville. And then the really cool piece where it's going to end is Liz is going to explain the Urban Wilderness Gateway Park.
Thank you. Oh. Magic. Thank you. Yes, thank you. So this is the sort of concept design for the Urban Wilderness Gateway Park. This is where James White Parkway currently terminates into Sevierville Pike. And this project will be a 1.2 mile realignment of roadway, combining all these lanes into an existing southbound roadway. The interchange realignment at the southern project terminus, so this is down near Sevierville Pike on the west side, and then the northbound realignment will connect to the adjacent neighborhood, so all the way up near Anita Drive. So this project is extensive and will be, a big asset to these neighborhoods and provide sort of a launch space for the urban wilderness area in South Knoxville. It's let's see, I believe it's an addition to the TIP that we're currently asking for. And I believe Craig will speak to that later today. But, it's still in concept phase, so we still have some specific design issues. So this is a pretty rough sketch of what it'd look like, but we're excited about it.
And then the phase 7 there, the Urban Wilderness Gateway Park, is the furthest along, which is why you see design there. And once we have our grant agreement signed, then we'll enter design for all of those other phases that we're looking at. Are there any questions?
Is there any questions? I have one, so no one else wants to talk. What is the red up there? What does that represent? Is that underneath the bridge or is that on top of the bridge? What is that?
That's actually a pavilion structure that will be under the bridge and sort of extend out. If you've been over to the Baker Creek Preserve area recently, they have a similar pavilion that was recently constructed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, thank you, ladies. That was good luck. Good job on getting the grant. I mean, I think it's.
Yeah, and I will add one reason we wanted to bring this to you is, as you'll see coming up, several of these projects will have to be put into our TIP. So you'll have more background when those come forward. So
There's no motion. Moving on to item number 4, fiscal year 2023, 2026 TIP amendments. Craig, you're up.
Yep, we'll have to do a swap on the slides, which is not my bailiwick. Fortunately, Dallas is here to save me.
I don't know who has the clicker.
Not good. Can we get this out of the way? Thank you, sir. You're welcome. All right. So TIP amendments. As our previous speakers have said, one of these actually is going to be the Urban Wilderness Gateway Park. The other is for a TDOT project, Emory Road interchange. These are both exempt projects that will be moving forward. Pretty significant dollars being added to the TIP that you see there. The total funding added is about $25 million. We're removing some LSTBG, local LSTBG project funding that had already been obligated, so kind of correcting the record for that Emory Road interchange project. You'll see a significant NHPP bump, which is a cost increase for that interchange project, and then $2.3 million in these Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods funds, which are for design, again, moving that gateway project forward. No construction money yet on that, just from a time frame perspective. I-75 at Emory Road. Again, this is reconfiguring this interchange to a diverging diamond and improving capacity, safety, and operations there. This is, I know the county's been working closely with TDOT on this, and this is primarily just adjusting the schedule to move construction from 24 to 25. Removing again those local design funds that were already obligated, and then increasing the construction costs pretty substantially from $10 million to $33,325 that you see there. That's again NHPP funds. That really is the sum of what we're seeing there. Total project cost $35 million. I will go ahead and move on to the next. And again, as we just saw, Urban Wilderness Gateway Park. This is that realignment of the roadway and that programming that we saw there at the southern terminus, as well as the traffic reconfiguration to all southbound lanes, as well as then that linear park along the northbound lanes. City of Knoxville project, again, under that Reconnecting Communities grant, programming NEPA here in fiscal 25, $300,000 just to kind of continue to advance that phase, as well as then design funds in 2026, $2 million in that. We anticipate the total project cost once we get to construction and all in will be $25 million on this project.
I got a question.
Sure.
Was there matching funds associated with that grant, or is that Can you kind of explain that? I should have asked the ladies whenever they were up there.
Matching funds on this are a little bit unusual, and I may draw them back up because there is an overall 50-50 match that the city has committed to. That was not necessarily a requirement of the grant program. And how exactly that's going to be represented, I think, is going to be resolved through that contractual discussion with DOT. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes. The matching funds in the Reconnecting Communities program are across the whole grant and not by segment. So we can have matching funds that are coming in from the East Knoxville Greenway that can offset this. It's not individual project by project within the grant. It's overall to the 42 million.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand if we're putting TIP money in it, how was that part of the match or what is that?
Yeah, in this case, this is all, if you look at the tip page that's there, those are 100% federal funds that are shown on that. And you will, my anticipation is we're going to see that. So this is the only one of these projects. They've referenced the additional project. This one is a freestanding project, is an amendment. Those other cultural connectors and greenway trails will go into our bike and pedestrian grouping as modifications. So they will not be board actions. It'll just be plugging in those individual sections. And I'm working with Liz on those.
Thank you for that
Or I'm sorry,
clarification.
yeah.
Yep.
And if there are no further questions, we do recommend approval of these amendments and of course, also that reaffirmation that the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process is being followed.
Hey,
Do you have a
Chris.
question, Jim?
Yeah, question. On the Emory Road, that money that's getting, that NHPP money that's getting moved, where's that coming from? Where's it being reallocated from, so to speak?
I don't know that it would really be reallocated other than it's just within TDOT's, I'm sure as they were going through looking at their overall program, I don't know that this was shifted from an existing committed project, but within their budget, I don't know that I could speak terribly granularly to that. I don't know if Troy perhaps has. Yeah, it would be part of that process.
That was a general fund transfer.
Okay, thank you.
It wouldn't be general fund because those would be state funds, right? Yeah.
So is that project is, I guess we're getting ready to be bid out, is that
We're getting there.
right away been completed yet? Do we know?
Those would have been fiscal '23. I would anticipate those would have already been obligated funds. So we're approaching construction. Is there?
I know they were purchasing right away. They said it was very complicated. There was lots of parcels there, but I don't know what the status is. Though.
Yeah, they asked us to move it to fiscal '25, so that implies that they anticipate it's moving forward to construction in the next 9 months or 11 months.
Thank you, Craig. Is there any more questions for Craig? Okay, we need a motion to approve these resolutions for the TIP.
Motion to approve.
Need a second?
Second.
Is there any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by no. Motion carries. Item number 5, PM 2.5 CMAQ Program Air Quality Standard Update.
So a couple of different items here. We have the statewide CMAQ program and then the closely related kind of functional CMAQ PM 2.5 air quality programming and as well as some air quality standard updates. And there was a memo that was distributed that is in the packet just recently, and those changes to the CMAQ programming in an effort to better utilize funds across the state and compete for that August redistribution of funds, which the state was much more successful this round in bringing additional revenue to the state. They are advancing that TIP programming, both current programming, if a project is not ready for construction in this fiscal year, they are asking us to remove that construction funding so they have more flexibility within the CMAQ programming. And then going forward, TIP programming, when we develop the next TIP, will initially be for those design phases, and right away in construction programming for awarded projects would be put into the program at the time that phase nears notice to proceed. working with them on what exactly that timeline would look like, but we would work with each of our partners on that. Again, I would point out that the original award amounts have not been rescinded, and the project sponsor, again, will coordinate with our staff as well as the state CMAQ office and get those project funds in as those phases approach readiness. The consequence of that for the current TIP is we are working at modifications to remove construction funding for 2 projects here in the region that fall into this kind of realm that the project is not quite ready for construction phase. I'm coordinating with City of Knoxville on their ATMS Phase 1 project that will be removing the construction phase, as well as we're going to be inserting some PM 2.5 money to advance those development phases of that project at the same time. And then also Oak Ridge's signal timing optimization phase 3. That project's not ready for construction within this current timeframe, so we're going to remove the construction phase for that project. I will pause for a moment for that process questions before I talk a little bit about PM 2.5 funds. And I know Mike has some issues or some matters to talk about as well with the standard updates.
Questions or comments for Craig on that part?
None? All right. So CMAQ PM 2.5 is a little bit of it is a different pot of money that is allocated only to areas that don't meet that standard. At the current time, we are the only region in the state of Tennessee that has that. So these functionally operate as an additional pot of money that the TPO has programming authority over, in addition to those state CMAQ funds that are resolved by the TDOT and the Air Quality Office. Fiscal 25, the current balance for these funds is a little over $5.6 million for the region. We'll see that programming dollars that are there, kind of some pending obligations that are expected to happen to draw those down. So the available fiscal balance, those, I guess the first ones, let me point out those projects are already programmed in the top table there. You see about $2.3 million. And then the traffic control, that's that ATMS Phase 1 project that I'm coordinating with the city. Those are those development funds that I referenced, and we're working on making sure that those are the correct dollar figures before we would process change to that project. Assuming those move in that direction, the amount of available funding that we would have for fiscal 25 would be that $2.5 million. We would really like to obligate all of those dollars in this fiscal year. Whether that ultimately becomes something that we would potentially flex to one of our transit partners for an opportunity is one option. But what we really do, we're in a fortunate position when we have CMAQ cost overruns, we're able to fund those overruns out of the PM 2.5 pot. So I would ask anyone that has a current CMAQ project to continue to follow up with this. I know the county has one that we're working on getting some updates on, potentially a cost overrun there. And we want to get a clean look at that before we would entertain looking at other projects that may be able to obligate additional funds this year. That really is kind of what I have on that. And again, that's kind of the where I'm looking at. I have Middlebrook Pike ATMS expansion as well as another possible project. And then there's that project that I referenced with Knox County. So those would be kind of our where we'd be looking at first to utilize any of those funds before we would consider having kind of a mini project call for any additional funds there. It's a pretty small pot by the time we would do that.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any questions?
If there
Mike has something, all right.
there are none, Mike is up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on this item. It actually could have probably been a standalone agenda item, but it ties in with what Craig was saying, how the CMAQ funding is currently only eligible for Knoxville region, is the only region eligible to receive those funds. You see on this map here, we're the only area in Tennessee highlighted there, the counties around Knox, and then there's only one other in the southeast around Birmingham. There's several others in the northeast and west, but again, we're the only ones in Tennessee. But that could, in fact, change here in the next couple of years. Earlier this year, EPA officially enacted a new revised PM 2.5 standard for the annual measurement, reducing that from 12 micrograms per cubic meter down to 9. And so this may result in additional areas being designated non-attainment in Tennessee that would then spread out that CMAQ set aside. So I think it's about $5 million per year. So right now it's a pretty substantial amount of funds that are only directed to the Knoxville region, as Craig talked about, and sort of unofficially TDOT has told us we have the authority to select projects for those. We don't really have that officially in writing, but again, that's kind of, go ahead.
Clarify. We do have it officially in writing for fiscal '25. Beyond that is contingent, and we'll see, it may rely on this change, but for fiscal '25, we do have it in writing.
Right. So we do have that $2.5 million left over, I guess, for FY25. So for PM, just real quick, I think most people are pretty familiar, but this is one of the standards that EPA regulates because of health and environmental impacts. On PM, it's particularly health impacts. These PM 2.5, in reference here, the size, it's 20 times less than the diameter of a human hair, so really small. These can be inhaled deep in your lungs and create issues. There's lots of health effects, especially for folks that have breathing issues and asthma and so forth. So that's why these are regulated. And every 5 years or so, EPA looks at their standards to see if they're still meeting the health intent. And so that's why they've revised it down. PM comes from several different sources. This is an EPA slide. It kind of leaves out a lot of the transportation ones other than unpaved roads, which fortunately we don't have a whole lot of here. But it comes from other industries and also from brake and tire wear from cars and also diesel engines also. So the history for Knoxville, this goes back to the 1997 annual standard at 15 micrograms per cubic meter. That was actually not effective until April 2005. EPA revoked that standard after they did the 2012 standard, so that one went away. However, the 2006 daily standard is what we're still subject to. We were designated for that in December 2009, redesignated in 2017 to maintenance, but maintenance lasted for a 20-year period. So now we're at the 2024 standard, and it remains to be seen what will be designated for that. So I'll just get my pointer here. So the milestones here, again, the standards were officially released in February of this year. So February of next year, they'll do the initial designations for this standard. It's based on a 3-year design value, 21 through 2023. And then there's a process after that. But the final designations don't come down until February of 2026. So a couple years out for that. And it's actually based on 2022 to 2024. So you get an extra year to see if your air quality comes back into compliance. So these are the areas currently projected to fail that 9 microgram per cubic meter, the new standard across the country. Anything with a red dot is a monitor that's exceeding that value. So we have one here in Knoxville area. There's monitors spread around. This one's at the old rural high school, if anybody remembers where that was. So it's hard to read on this slide, but we're actually just barely over that. It's a 9.1. If you're at 9.0, you're good. You're meeting the standard, but barely over that. So the ones I wanted to highlight or highlighted on this are the other ones that might be affected in Tennessee. There's one just across the state line of Chattanooga in Georgia, but that would probably pull in the Chattanooga area. There's one in Nashville. There's one in a rural part of Kentucky on the state line. I don't know if that would affect us or not, but so these are the ones that may be tabbed. But there's some extenuating circumstances. If folks recall, in 2023, basically all of Canada was on fire. And this is the smoke plume that was in the middle of July of that year. And you can see how much Tennessee was affected by that. And so you are allowed with EPA to do what's called an exceptional event if your monitors are exceeding, and it's just due to this one-off, exceptional event that you can demonstrate you can plead for that to be not counted against you, essentially. But it's a long and kind of a very detailed process that they make you go through to demonstrate that. So, but that may affect how many areas wind up being designated. So in summary, and I do like to show these before and after, about 20 years ago from the Look Rock webcam versus current time. So these air quality standards have had an impact in our area, cleaning up the air. But where we're at now, again, the new standards at 9, we're just barely over that with 21 to 23 data. So those initial designations that come out next February by the state will have to be based on that 21 to 23 value, which shows us exceeding. So it may be that we initially get designated as or recommended for being designated as non-attainment. But we're hopeful that when the final designations come down and you lose 2021 and add 2024, right now preliminarily we're hearing we should be good. It's obviously 2024 is not over yet. So that remains to be seen, but then there's also that exceptional event demonstration that could also come into play. So we're not sure exactly where the chips will fall and how many other areas may be designated. So it's one of those things with CMAQ funds. Obviously, nobody wants to be out of attainment for air quality, but consolation prize is if you are non-attainment, you do get that additional funding source for transportation improvements to reduce emissions. But that's the overview of the new standard. If there are any questions or comments, I can take those.
Any questions or comments from Mike? All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Item number 6, ADA Transition Plan Update and Progress Report. Craig.
Yep, I'm back. Just a real quick update. It's been a few years, and we've had some changes. If we went back several years ago, used to be these were required annually, and just a reminder that these are required from TDOT every 3 years. So if you have not submitted an update in the last 3 years, which the last round of those that we kind of monitored and encouraged folks was a bit past that, you may be due for submitting an update. As of course, general process and guidance is to, of course, continue implementing the transition plan. That's what it's there for, and document that progress regularly so that you can be able to go back then and submit that update rather than trying to catch it up over multiple years. And if you didn't document that well, what did we do in fiscal 22 now that we're reporting? If you have not submitted anything or an update by the end of this year, TDOT requests then that you submit a 3-year self-certification form. That form asks for status of the transition plan. Everybody in the region, when we went through this process several years ago, everybody has one, a summary of updates that are there is kind of on that form, a link to the published transition plan, which should be on your website, and then name and contact information for the ADA coordinator. If you haven't updated one in several times, you may have had staff transitions for the new contact. And then, of course, similarly, municipality mayor signs the form. And then a progress report that documents the work to date, barriers removed, that sort of thing. Again, there is no required format for that progress report, so it can be a spreadsheet, it can be a written form. There isn't any form or anything to submit that report on. Shanna Chevalier with TDOT is at tdot.adacompliance@tn.gov is the contact for that. She would certainly be the primary contact for any questions on that. If there are any general comments or questions, I can answer those or attempt to answer those or point you in the right direction. And then I did, the attachment in the form is that updated compliance form.
Do you care to share that digitally so we can forward to our communities? That'd be awesome.
I can do that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Craig? Okay, seeing none. Item number 7, Mobility Plan 2050 update.
I guess. Yeah, hi, I'll just do a quick introduction here and first sound check and make sure Timothy is able to, we can hear him or he can hear us. You there, Timothy?
I am here. Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes, loud and clear. So this is another quick update as we've been giving you all as we've been working through our mobility plan update. So I'll just turn it over to Timothy, and I'll just switch the slides when you tell me to. So take it away.
Excellent. Thanks. Next slide. So here's where we are. We're at just finished the second round of community engagement, which kind of marks that 2/3 or even like 75% mark. A lot has been accomplished, a lot still remaining to kind of draft everything up. So we know a lot, we heard a lot. Now it's time to really synthesize most of that and refine those last couple pieces. Next slide, please. I want to give you a quick update on outreach to date. It has been a while since you've seen some of the numbers. Our project website, knoxmobility.org, has been updated with some of the summary outreach pieces as well, so people who may have missed out can then read back what has been accomplished. The online survey is up to almost 800 survey participants. Really great. We are starting to synthesize and use some of that feedback, but it's still open and available, however. You never really shut down the online survey. Same with the interactive map. We're up to almost 200 points. And those are really going to be useful when we come to evaluating and prioritizing projects. So we're going to use that feedback specifically as we move forward. We held 5 focus group sessions, very topical, very interactive. This was held previously, I believe, in January or February. And an update on community events or the public meetings. So we did round 1 earlier in February. We just completed round 2 in October. Both of those had 3 different opportunities to participate. Monday evening, kind of in person, Tuesday afternoon virtually, what they call lunch and learn sessions, and then Wednesday evening at the Blount County Library. And just kind of want to talk about those in a little bit more detail. Also to mention that after the Tuesday virtual lunch and learn, we posted the same polling questions from that event in an online survey. We're up to 194 responses on the survey post event. So, yes, we had people come out in person, and yes, we made it available afterwards and got even more participation that way. Next slide, please. Just a couple of photos. We showed maps and table of projects. I'm sure it's everyone's favorite thing to do is look over tables of dollars and categories and descriptions, right? We had several interactive stations there in the middle where we could pretend vote with dollar bills on what categories of improvements. And we've got some results to show there. And on the right-hand side, you can see that demand was standing room only to get into that event. It was sort of amazing and tremendous. But also more accurately, that was the line to vote. And we did snag a few people after they voted to come in and talk to us about transportation. So it was a great opportunity to capitalize on a captive audience. Next slide, please. So yes, on the left, those 2 questions were were polling questions from all 3 events combined. And we asked about your most pressing problems to fix and what transportation dollars and how you would allocate them. So you see on the left-hand side, the people who were in person or that virtual event were voting for local sidewalks, moving around without a car, or improving daily commute and congestion. Whereas on the right would be the 196 participants in the online survey, and they're in the same order. And you see that the 3 highlighted, daily commute to work was much more heavily responded, as was maintaining roads and bridges. So when you think larger group, more regionally, those are the items that sort of pop up versus the persons who are willing to come to an in-person event and tell you how they feel. And then lastly, the new roadway connections, you see that went from 8% to 13%. It's a pretty significant jump in the total mixture. So I think lesson learned is when you are dealing with people in person, they're very passionate about certain topics. When you're dealing with people, a larger group, more regionally thinking, slightly other topics come up are more pressing. So I think we understand that anecdotally, but here's the proof right there in the same order. Different priorities kind of pop up with a larger group. On bottom, how we should spend dollars, it was roadway, bridge, and maintenance, complete streets improvements on some of those major corridors, and then walking and biking were the top 3. And the right-hand side, what kind of happens, some slivers went to other in relatively the same proportion, and it was that ITS smart technology that kind of received a plus 5% bump. Pretty big change when you get that larger group included. Part of that may be being we just didn't explain ITS and technology there in person, and part of it being people just kind of wanted to spread out the dollars a little bit more evenly. So two really important takeaways, I guess, from the difference between in-person and virtual after the fact. Next slide, please. Just a real quick on projects themselves. Just want to note that there's about 160 projects in this 2050 mobility plan at present. About 118 are rollovers from the previous plan. There's about 40 new projects added to give you a sense. So a really good number of new projects and locations. If we look at them by category and take this with a grain of salt, you're picking one project type for what is a very lengthy description of project needs. So roadway projects, which would include reconstructions, widenings, general maintenance, probably 3/4, like 73% of projects are categorized as quote unquote roadways. A good 14% are bicycle and pedestrian. Those would be the greenways or a pedestrian bridge, or even a complete streets project that's identified as more of a multimodal pedestrian item. There's ITS and transit projects, so some of the traffic signalization and prioritization items, or even new bus purchases. That's a good 10%, understandable there. And then lastly, some miscellaneous studies or other projects makes up about 3% or less than 5%. But good mixture, kind of consistent, just kind of what we expected. But roadway projects are also addressing multimodal as well, so it's kind of a misnomer that we're putting 75% of our funding into roadways. We're not. It's just how we categorize projects a little bit. The last note is we're trying to construct an ArcGIS Online map to kind of complement the static map. So zoom in, click on an item, find out some more details, and have that be more of a tool in the meantime of draft projects in status. So something you can interact with and get some more information from. Next slide, if you don't mind. So looking ahead, the revenue projections of 2050, we have agreement from TDOT and from FHWA. We worked really hard on explaining the what and the why and the where, and everything is copacetic, which is great. We can then prioritize projects in process, clearly on Stantec's side of the table, to get that data-informed evaluation using some of the interactive map points I mentioned earlier, and getting that relative list ready of near, mid, and long-term projects, which then can be massaged by TAC members. So that's kind of what's in progress and upcoming. If you do next slide, this one being my least favorite diagram I've ever put together, but I think us in the room is the right audience, right? So big picture from the projections, we're gonna call this about $5.4 billion to 2050 in our revenue projections. That's a rounded number, right? So Craig has been working very diligently on what the precise number is. But round number, it's like 5.4. And when we split it out, there's some committed projects from the 10-year plan of about $1.5 billion. And then we've got a pot of money for the 2030 horizon, the 2040 horizon, the 2050 horizon. So all those numbers, if I did the math correctly, add up to 5.4 essentially. And then at some point you run out of funding and all the other projects become illustrative. So just to relate that's what we're working on, and it's getting that list of priority projects so we can know which ones fall into which of those buckets. Obviously, we know which ones are in the 10-year plan. It's about which projects are the highest priority for 2030, 2040, and when we run out of money in 2050. Next slide, please. And then the schedule. So several things checked off since the last time you saw this. That final project list really is the point of emphasis right now, applying some environmental and equity screening to that to document those, building that ArcGIS Online interface for us to use in the meantime. Those two really are the priority. And then we're still planning on a draft MTP to begin that review process in December. It's going to happen. We're thinking positive here. And then obviously a TDOT review, some revisions, an FHWA review, and then a public review before we can get to spring adoption, right? Everybody's excited for those, right? That's just need that positivity. That's all I got. This is what I'll leave you with. Happy to answer any questions of the status of where we're going. But this is the good overview picture of kind of where we stand and where we're heading.
All right. Thank you, Timothy. Is there any questions or comments this time? I think that was a pretty good update. So, all right. Moving on. Number 8, TDOT and FHWA updates. TDOT.
Don't have tons of updates for this one. I guess we had discussed briefly, everyone wants to know what's going on with SPP and stuff like that. We have an SPP and 10-year plan stuff. We're looking at those. There'll be an announcement later this week. One part of it is, in addition to all of this, we're dealing with $500 million worth of damage to Northeast Tennessee, and that's just on the state roads. So with all that mixed in together, be on the lookout for an announcement Thursday or Friday this week. We'll have more information on what's going on.
Thank you for that update. Any updates from FHWA? I don't think anybody's online or anything today, so you have any, Doug?
Yeah, I'll just mention there are two NOFOs out, the Protect NOFO. I think it's due February 24th of 25. It's promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation. And then there's a RAISE, it's due January 30th of 2025. So if anyone's interested in putting in for those and need any help or assistance, let us know and we can get you some more information.
Okay, thank you for that. Other business, you want to cover that?
Sure. Due to the holidays, our executive board meeting is moved up to November 20th. And then next month, due to the holidays, our tech will be December 10th, but our board will be moved up again to December 18th. And in our packet, I went ahead and put a list of meetings for 2025. There is a few meeting dates that are impacted by the different holidays, and we try to account for the school's spring breaks and fall breaks. So those are there for your calendar. I also, Craig has time to do his obligation report. So especially the transit folks will be reaching out to you, but he may have questions about different projects that were obligated. So keep an eye out for his emails or contact. And then when we get into January, it'll be time for the election of officers. So Jack will have served his 2 terms, so we'll be needing a new chair. So I guess if typically the vice chair moves up. I don't know. That'll be up to Jim to decide if he wants to go to the chair. And
it's not a choice. He's moving up.
Or up to the group. But if anyone's interested in an officer position, be thinking about it. And you can reach out and let me know if you think you might be interested. Let me see if I guess that's all I had.
All right. Well, with no other business, I guess we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Yes, sir. What? Public comment. Hey, was not on my list, so I apologize for that.
It's on the slides, but not on
Is there any public that would like to comment? Seeing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you for that.